Dear learners, welcome you all to e-learning platform. In week 3, we will learn Heart of Darkness part 2. I am Faisal Ahmed with you throughout this lesson. Heart of Darkness is comprised of 3 parts. In this lesson, I will discuss part 2, summary and analysis. First of all, summary. Part 2 opens with one evening as Marlowe lies on the deck of his wrecked steamer. The manager and his uncle appear within earshot and discuss Kurtz. The manager complains that Kurtz has come to the Congo with plans to turn the stations into beacons of civilization and moral improvement, and that Kurtz wants to take over the manager's position. In the right-hand side of the screen, you can see a documentary image of an ivory collection. This collection was done by the Belgian traders and colonizers in Congo. He recalls that about a year earlier, Kurtz sent down a huge load of ivory of the highest quality by camel with his clerk, but that Kurtz himself had turned back to his station after coming 300 miles down the river. The clerk, after turning over the ivory and a letter from Kurtz instructing the manager to stop sending him incompetent man, informs the manager that Kurtz has been very ill and has not completely recovered. Continuing to converse with his uncle, the manager mentions another man whom he finds troublesome, a wandering trader. The manager's uncle tells him to go ahead and have the trader hanged because no one will challenge his authority here. The manager's uncle implies that Kurtz simply may die of tropical disease. In a few days, the El Dorado expedition went into the patient wilderness that closed upon it as the sea closes over a diver. Much later, the cryptic message arrives that all the expedition's donkeys have died. By that time, the repairs on Marlowe's steamer are nearly complete, and Marlowe is preparing to leave on a 2-month trip up the river to Kurtz, along with the manager and several pilgrims. The river is treacherous and the trip is difficult. The ship proceeds only with the help of a crew of natives and Europeans called cannibals, who actually proved to be quite reasonable people. The men aboard the ship hear drums at night along the river banks and occasionally catch glimpses of native settlements during the day, but they can only guess at what lies further inland. Marlowe feels a sense of kinship between himself and the savages along the river banks, but his work in keeping the ship afloat and steaming keeps him safely occupied and prevents him from brooding too much. So that's the end of the summary of part 2. Now we'll discuss the analysis of Heart of Darkness part 2. Marlowe's work ethic and professional skills are contrasted throughout this section with the incompetence and laziness of the company's employees. Marlowe is working to repair his ship, and then piloting it up the river provides a much needed distraction for Marlowe, preventing him from brooding upon the folly of his fellow Europeans and the savagery of the natives. To Marlowe's mind, work represents the fulfillment of a contract between two independent human beings. Repairing the steamer and then piloting it, he convinces himself, has little to do with the exploitation horror he sees all around him. The exploitation of the Europeans towards the African savages, or whom we call cannibals. Nevertheless, Marlowe is continually forced to interpret the surrounding world. The description of his journey upriver is strange and disturbing. Marlowe describes the trip as a journey back in time to a prehistoric Earth. This remark reflects the European inclination to view colonized peoples as primitive. What disturbs Marlowe most about the native peoples he sees along the river, in his words, is the suspicion of their not being inhuman. In some deep way, these savages are like Europeans, perhaps just like the English were when Britain was colonized by Rome. Marlowe's self-imposed isolation from the manager and the rest of the pilgrims forces him to consider the African members of his crew, and he is confused about what he sees. He wonders, for example, how his native fireman, the crewman who keeps the boiler going, is any different from a poorly educated, ignorant European doing the same job. A quote for you: "It was unearthly, and the men were, no, they were not inhuman. Well, you know, that was the worst of it, the suspicion of their not being inhuman." The mysterious figure, of course, is at the heart of Marlowe's confusion. The manager seems to suggest that his own resistance against the consequences of the tropical climate reflects not just physical constitution, but a moral fitness, or the approval of some higher power. Next to the petty ambitions and sycophantic maneuverings of the manager, however, Kurt's grandiose gestures and morally ambiguous successes are appealing. Still, Marlowe is not yet the Buddha, preaching in European clothes. He will become on board the Nelly. Instead, he concentrates on steering the steamboat and avoiding snags to save his mind from considering all of these philosophical and political implications. In addition to intensifying the reader's understanding of Marlowe's impending epiphany, Part 2 contains a digression where he abandons his narrative and speaks of Kurds in a general sense. Unlike the cannibals, Kurds possessed a ravenous hunger. You should have heard him say, "My intended, my ivory, my station, my river, my everything." His bald has suggested the ivory that he had spent so much effort in securing. His nerves went wrong, and he participated in unspeakable rites. He had taken a high seat among the devils of the land, and Marlowe found it impossible to know how many powers of darkness claimed him for their own. However, what is more striking than these elusive hints at barbarity is Marlowe's short yet important defense of Kurds. All Europe contributed to the making of Kurds. More importantly, Kurds is not an isolated figure. All of Europe has produced him, and the power, hunger, and evil he embodies. The appearance of the Harlequin, like Kurt's jester, at this point emphasizes the charisma and power of the demagogue and prepares the reader, like the previously discussed digression, for the entrance of Kurtz in Part 3. So the cannibals, the savages in African Congo are ignorant in terms of education or civilization, but the Europeans are ignorant in terms of morality, in terms of humanity. That's all. Thank you very much.